To install PostgreSQL, you can go to the postgresql.org, and after that, on the main page, go to the download section. In addition, you see the latest releases on the main page. Depending on your operating system, you can choose Linux, Mac OS, Windows. Here I'm on Windows, so I choose the Windows. On this page, you see a table for platform support and the PostgreSQL version for that. And also the installer includes PostgreSQL Server, pgAdmin, and psql. So I click on the download the installer, and on this page I can choose my operating system and the version of PostgreSQL that I want to install. Here I use the Windows x86-64. You can download the latest version of the PostgreSQL on this page and there won't be any problem. And also, if the download link didn't pop up, you can click here. After downloading the installer, you click on it to actually start the installer. Here you click on next, and over here for installation directory, I recommend you to install it on C drive so you won't face any kind of permission issue. The components that we are going to install are PostgreSQL Server, pgAdmin 4, Stack Builder, and command line tools. Stack Builder is for installing add-on extensions for the PostgreSQL. Here you choose the data directory. I recommend you to leave it as the default one. Now you provide a password for your super user Postgres, and you should remember this password. You need this for the next steps for working with the PostgreSQL. So I type a particular password, and I have to remember it, jot it down somewhere because we are going to need it, as I said. Next, you have to specify a particular port. I leave it as the default one unless you have a reason to change it. And for this one, you can choose a different locale. I choose the default one again. And finally, I hit the next to actually install the PostgreSQL. Finally, I uncheck the option for the Stack Builder to download and install additional tools for me because we don't need it right now. Now, if you open the Start menu, you'll see under the PostgreSQL, I'll see the Stack Builder application, installation notes, pgAdmin 4, and psql or SQL shell. psql and the pgAdmin 4 are the subjects of the next lessons. So please check out my PostgreSQL playlist, and do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to not lose future content on PostgreSQL. Now I talk about the psql, which is an interactive command line interface for PostgreSQL, providing a powerful environment to interact with the PostgreSQL database server. If the database server is not on your local host, you can use the IP of that machine. Here we use the default database, which is Postgres, and default port, which is 5432. So do not change the port unless you have a reason to do so. And for the username, use the Postgres, which is the username super user that we have already created with a password that we have set during installation of the Postgres. Now that we have opened up the psql interactive shell, we can run SQL commands in this environment. For example, select returns information, and the version function returns the version of the PostgreSQL installed on our machine. I run another command as an example. For example, select now to return the time, but I have to enter the semicolon at the end so the PostgreSQL interactive shell knows that the command has ended and can run that specific line. On the shell before the hash sign, you see that we are currently on the Postgres database. We can create another database by using the create database command and name our database. Here we name it colors. To get the list of databases available, we can use the \l command. This command returns the list of databases available. We have colors that we have already created, Postgres, which is super user template 0 template 1. In PostgreSQL, \c is a meta command used in the PostgreSQL command line interface or psql to connect to a specific database. It's a shorthand for the \connect command. Once executed, it switches your session to the specified database, allowing you to execute queries on that database. Now that we have switched to the colors database, we can run some commands on this database. For instance, we can use create table SQL command to create tables. Tables are fundamental database objects that store data in a structured tabular format consisting of rows and columns. Here I create a table named colors. Each table is defined by a set of columns where each column has a specific data type such as integer, text, or date, or something else, and the actual data is stored in rows. Our table here consists of columns color ID and color name of type integer and char20 respectively. Now that we have created the table, we can insert some values into it by using the command insert into and the name of the table. Here, since we know the order of the columns, we can insert values into all columns and omit the column list. Also, there is another version of the command that I'm not using here, but you can specify columns if inserting into all columns. In this video, I'm giving you some practical, simple examples so you get a feeling of how to work with the PostgreSQL database using the structured query language. So the values that I insert into the colors table are red, green, and blue. Now that the values are inserted into the table, we can use the select statement with the asterisk, which is a wildcard that means all columns. This tells PostgreSQL to select every column in the colors table. In addition, do not forget to check out my PostgreSQL playlist, and do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to not lose future content on PostgreSQL. In addition to the PostgreSQL command line interface, there is another graphical user interface called pgAdmin. When you first open up the pgAdmin, it asks you for a master password. When you enter the password and check the save password box, it won't ask you anymore for the password when you log into the different database servers. After hitting OK, different servers will be loaded under the category servers. By expanding PostgreSQL 17, you see 3 collections: databases, login group roles, and table spaces. Under the databases, you see 2 databases, Postgres and Colors. Postgres consists of different collections, and the Colors is the database that we've already created. Under the Colors database, if I collapse the Postgres database, under the Colors database, if you go to the schemas, by the way, there are different components under the Colors database which are used by the database to function properly. But here, if we expand the schemas and expand the public, we see different components like tables, which are the most important things because we store the data in objects like tables. Now, if we expand the columns, we see the columns inside our table that we have already created, like color ID and color names. If you want to read the data stored in our color table, we'll right-click on it and go to the View Edit Data and select all rows. This way, a SQL query will be actually run and the data inserted in the color ID and color name are shown. That is equivalent to running the SQL command select all from public.colors. By all, I am referring to the wildcard asterisk. Basically, this is the way to read data from the table using the pgAdmin graphical user interface. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to not lose future content on PostgreSQL. Before we dive into the PostgreSQL server, let's take a quick tour of the pgAdmin user interface. On the left-hand side of the pgAdmin user interface, you see the Object Explorer pane. We already have one group called servers. We can create another group by right-clicking, clicking on Create and Server Group, and giving it a specific name. Then clicking on Save and waiting for the changes to take effect. You see another server group. Moving down the tree, inside these servers, you see a collection of databases. But before that, I removed the server group that I've already created because I don't need it. Now, if I click on the PostgreSQL 17 and click on the databases, you'll see 2 databases there. One of them is the Postgres database, which has several components, and the other one is the Colors database that we have already created. Inside the Postgres database, schemas, and down in the public, you see several components which are essential for the functionality of the database. But now if I get out of the Postgres database, collapse it and expand the Colors database that we have already created, you can go to the schemas, public, and inside the tables, you see the colors table, which has columns like color ID and color name. We created the colors table with the columns, color ID and color name, and inserted some color names into the colors table using the psql command line shell. On the right hand side of the screen, we have the browser tabs. Currently, there is a number of default browser tabs that we can move through. For instance, if you select a particular component in the pgAdmin page, in the Object Explorer page, and if you go to the SQL browser tab, you can select and copy all the SQL commands or structured query language commands to recreate that specific table inside that public schema. You could basically run this command on a different database server, and it would exactly create the same table with the same columns. The Properties tab shows the configuration details for your currently selected object. Depending on what object you have already selected, the details would be be different. The Statistics tab gives you some aggregated metrics for the Dependents and Dependencies tabs will help you investigate how all your server components relate to one another. For instance, if you click on Colors table inside the Dependencies tab, it shows you the schema. Finally, we have the Processes tab, which will list out any maintenance routines that pgAdmin is running in the background, such as database backups or purging outdated logs and so on. So these default browser tabs have good information in them. To actually keep the interface clean, I close all of the tabs, and you can also reopen all of them by choosing the open and selecting each tab to open them one by one. You can also find useful information on the dashboard tab depending on the object that you have selected. For example, if I select the configuration, it gives me some extra information about the database server and even about the system if it's applicable. There are other tabs also like activity that you can monitor things related to the database server. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to not lose future content on PostgreSQL. Now that we have covered the introductory stuff related to the PostgreSQL database, it's time to dive deeper into the graphical user interface. I would like to turn your attention to the 5 buttons on the top of the tree pane. Let's make sure that we have selected the colors table in the sidebar. By selecting the colors table, that would activate the 5 buttons at the top of the tree pane, so we can move through each one of them. The first button is called Query Tool, and its shortcut is Alt-Shift-Q. That shortcut is obviously for Windows, and on the Mac it's Option-Shift-Q. The Query Tool gives us a new browser tab where we can write and execute SQL commands on our SQL server. Basically, you write your SQL code up here at the top, and the results will display at the bottom pane. You can execute a script by hitting F5 or hitting the execute button, and you see the result in the bottom pane. When you're done with the window, you click on X on the upper right hand corner to close it. You'll be prompted whether to save or discard the script that you have written. The next button on the tree pane is called View Data. The shortcut is Alt or Option Shift V. This button is great when you want to take a quick look at the data that the table contains. It automatically executes a query that retrieves all of the rows from the table. You'll see those results down below. Now, while this looks like a query window, it's a little bit misleading that you can't actually edit the query directly. If you try and type up here at the top, it simply won't let you. As you can see, it will ask you whether you want to manually edit the query or not. And it's up to you whether you want to go to another page or continue with the same page or query tool. Here I hit the cancel button. If you wanted to add filters or other restrictions on the data that's being returned, use the buttons at the top. I close this window by hitting X and go to the next button, that is filtered rows. This brings up a window that helps you quickly locate data rows that match a search parameter. For instance, you can look through data and find all the rows that the color ID is equal to 2. After pressing the OK button, and the query returns just a row that I'm looking for, row number 2 and the color name green. Let's go ahead and close this tab and take a look at the other button, which is Search Objects. The shortcut is Alt or Option Shift S. This would allow you to look for various objects inside your database. For instance, if I look for the COL and hit search, it finds the colors table and the columns color ID and color name. You can double click on any of these object names to jump directly to that object in the tree view. You can search for anything that is related to your databases or tables, any object, literally. Finally, there is a tool to run the psql command line application inside the pgAdmin. The first time you run this command line tool, you might see a message saying that you have to set a binary path. For that, you can go to the file's preferences and set the binary path for psql. Here I run the command \d, which gives me the list of databases available, or the other command \!clear, which clears the command line window. The pgAdmin graphical interface provides a number of dialog-based workflows for accomplishing common tasks. This saves us from having to write out the SQL commands ourselves, like we did on the command line. I like to create a second database using these dialogues here in pgAdmin, so we can compare the 2 different working environments. Now that we have opened up the Create Database dialog workflow, the only thing that we need to fill out here is the database name. Let's make a database to store information about various names. Technically, that's all we need. We can simply hit the Save button to run the SQL commands in the backend and just create our database. We can also assign the database to a different owner account, for example. For example, an employee can configure the database to meet their needs. On the definition tab, we can change the way the text is encoded if we need to meet different compatibility with other systems. UTF-8 is a common text encoding system. I'm gonna go ahead and leave it as is. But if you need to make a change, you can select one from the drop-down menu to suit your needs. Also, we can build the database off of a template. This helps in the case that you have to create lots of different databases that share common tables and configurations. You simply create new database and designate it as a template, and then create new databases off of that. On the security tab, you can assign access permissions to the different users. So some people might be able to read some data from specific tables, but not be able to edit any data from those tables. The parameters tab controls database configuration options, where you can apply settings that affect the performance of the database and customize it for different requirements. The advanced tab allows you to control exactly which schemas would appear inside the sidebar. It effectively allows you to hide components of the database from the view. And finally, the SQL tab displays the actual commands that the pgAdmin sends to the server to create the database to our specifications. You recognize the first line from the prior video, or creating a database named colors, but the rest of the lines go into a little bit more detail about the configuration. From the selections made on the previous tabs, the pgAdmin graphical workflow saves us the trouble of needing to remember all of the possible options. However, if you do get comfortable with the SQL syntax, you can write and execute this snippet of code and get the exact same result. So you have options for how you want to work with your PostgreSQL servers. If at any points you want additional information, you have two buttons at the bottom of your window. The eye icon opens up the page to the Create Database documentation, where you can read more about the specifics of the syntax of the SQL command. Going back to the pgAdmin, the question mark icon opens up a page that provides specific help on the pgAdmin interface, so you can read more about these tabs and their different options and how to make use of them. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to not lose featured content on PostgreSQL. Also check out my PostgreSQL playlist. As always, see you all later.